Hey kids, now how about a story? Going with a new one here. On page 65, we have Pocahontas, Friends in a New Land. High on a cliff, a native princess named Pocahontas was exploring the forest with her friends Miko, a raccoon, and Flit, a hummingbird. Although the two creatures didn't always get along, both loved Pocahontas and were almost always with her. Suddenly, Pocahontas' friend, Nakoma, called to her from the river. Your father's back, she shouted. Come down here. Pocahontas began to run through the forest, then turned and jumped off the cliff instead. She swan dived into the crystal blue river and swam over to Nakoma's canoe. Miko leaped off the cliff after Pocahontas. He grabbed Flit nervously on the way down, and they dropped into the river with a splash. Breathlessly, Miko scrambled into the canoe, shook himself off, and took his usual lookout post at the front. Flit, annoyed at the raccoon for getting him wet, hovered in the air as Pocahontas and Nakoma steered the canoe home. When they arrived back at the village, Powhatan was happy to see Pocahontas. Kocoum has asked to seek your hand in marriage, he told his daughter. He will make a good husband. But he's so serious, Pocahontas replied unhappily. Miko agreed. When Powhatan wasn't looking, the raccoon puffed up his chest and made a grim face, pretending to be Kocoum. The silly animal could always make a Pocahontas laugh. Still, the young woman was troubled. She went to see the ancient tree spirit's grandmother Willow to ask for her advice. Pocahontas told her about a spinning arrow she kept seeing in a dream. It is pointing you down your path, the wise spirit told her. As Pocahontas tried to figure out what her path was, she climbed high into the branches of Grandmother Willow, with Miko and Flit close behind. They saw something they'd never seen before. A large boat with sails that Pocahontas mistook for clouds. It was the Susan Constant, a ship filled with English settlers seeking gold. A while later, Pocahontas saw one of the settlers exploring the forest. She was curious but cautious, as she hid behind some bushes. Moreover, Miko was a very mischievous raccoon. He always thought with his stomach and followed his nose. He scurried toward the man and poked his nose into the settler's bag. Well, you're a strange-looking fellow, said the man, who was named John Smith. You hungry? He handed the raccoon a biscuit. Miko nibbled happily. Still hidden, Pocahontas smiled. She was glad to see the stranger being so generous to her friend. Flit, on the other hand, was worried about Pocahontas. Even if Miko had gotten them into this mess, the hummingbird would do his best to get them out of it. Ever protective, he flew straight at the newcomer, poking at him and trying to make him leave. Luckily, Smith got called away by one of the other settlers. Soon, Pocahontas met John Smith face to face. As they got to know each other, she showed him how the land and water, the people and animals, were all connected to one another. John Smith was fascinated with all that Pocahontas had to teach. Miko was fascinated, too, with Smith's bag. The raccoon eagerly searched for more biscuits, but Flit, on the other hand, circled angrily around Smith's head. Flit just doesn't like strangers, Pocahontas explained to John Smith. Well, I'm not a stranger anymore, Smith said. He extended a finger to Flit. but the bird has just poked it with his sharp beak. Stubborn little fellow, isn't he? Smith said. Very stubborn, Pocahontas agreed. Just then Meeko popped out of Smith's bag. In his paw was a compass. It was too hard to eat, but Meeko hid his discovery in Grandmother Willow's branches anyway. Meanwhile, at the settlers' camp, Percy, a very spoiled dog, sat on a pillow, feeling lazy and... Sorry, had to check. Meanwhile, at the settlers' camp, Percy, a very spoiled dog, sat on a pillow, feeling lazy and looking smug. He was a pet pug of Governor Ratcliffe, who had been on the ship that brought the settlers to this new land. Percy had always had an easy life. His pillows were the finest and fluffiest, and he was always given the most delicious food. He was one pampered pooch until Meeko showed up. The always hungry raccoon had followed John Smith to his camp. It wasn't long before Meeko spied Percy's fine dinner. With a quick hand, he shoved it all into his mouth. Percy was furious when he saw what the raccoon had done. Barking wildly, sorry, cough. The dog ran after Meeko. Percy chased him out of camp and into the forest, near Grandmother Willow. Pocahontas and John Smith were there too. Smith had hurried back after learning that the settlers wanted to attack the natives, and he and Pocahontas were trying to figure out, how to keep the peace. They had realized how much the settlers and the natives could teach each other. Percy growled at Meeko and continued to chase him. "Meeko!" scolded Pocahontas. John Smith shook his head. "You see what I mean? Once two sides want to fight, nothing can stop them. Nothing except Grandmother Willow, all right." Nothing except Grandmother Willow. "All right, that's enough," the ancient tree spirit said to the animals. Percy was so stunned to see a talking tree that he fainted. A bit later, Grandmother Willow dipped one of her branches into the river. It caused the water to ripple outward. She explained that although the ripples were very small at first, they quickly grew larger. "But someone has to start them," she said. Pocahontas and John Smith knew that the tree spirit was trying to get them to change the way the natives and the settlers felt about each other. They agreed to talk to Chief Powhatan to see if peace could be reached. They never made it, though. Along the way, a native warrior attacked Smith. Then another settler shot the warrior, but Smith took the blame. He was taken prisoner and led to the native village. Flit, Meeko, and Percy watched the whole thing from the base of a tree. As Flit and Meeko began to follow Pocahontas back to the village, they turned and saw poor Percy, shaking with fear. Then the most surprising thing happened. Meeko laid a comforting paw on Percy's head, and the pug stopped shaking. With a nod, Meeko let Percy know he could come with them. Back at the village, the new friends looked on with sadness as Pocahontas visited John Smith. The natives had decided he would die the next morning. "I'm so sorry," she cried. "It would have been better if we'd never met. None of this would have happened." "Pocahontas, I'd rather die tomorrow than live 100 years without knowing you," John Smith told her. Pocahontas was heartbroken. She went back to see Grandmother Willow. "What can I do?" she asked sadly. Meeko wanted to help his friend. Trying to cheer up Pocahontas, he handed her John Smith's compass, which he had hidden. Looking at it, Pocahontas saw the spinning arrow that she had dreamed about. Now she knew what path to follow. Quickly, she ran to the village and stepped in front of John Smith, willing to give up her life to protect him. Chief Powhatan laid down his weapon. but the settlers had arrived. Governor Ratcliffe fired his gun. "No!" yelled Smith. He jumped in front of the native chief, taking the bullets himself. John Smith knew he would have to return to London to have his wounds treated. He and Pocahontas said goodbye, and he was carried to the ship. Everyone was sad to see him go. Percy decided to stay in the New Land with Miko and Flit, and they were happy to have him around. They watched as John Smith sailed away, thinking about how much had happened and what a wonderful surprise their new friendships turned out to be. The end.